Welcome back to my channel, Fazbear's Menagerie of Madness, where I'll explore the universe of Five Nights at Freddy's and I hope in a new and unique interpretation of events. This video will be about two topics, as I'll give my thoughts on the ongoing separation of continuities and give my timeline for the original trilogy of games. When going through the insurmountable lore for the Five Nights series, you'll eventually come across two sources that define the series. These include the December 2015 Reddit post following the release of the Silver Eyes novels, and Darko's first interview with creator Scott Cawthon following the release of the game Ultimate Custom Night. The Reddit post was released following a poor response from the community that saw the novels as not matching up with one or more of the games. This group would chastise the books on Amazon, although Scott wanted to make clear to those people the book is not intended to be a guide for the games or to fill in the gaps. As the post explains, sometimes the lore of something can become so crowded that you can't tell an original story anymore. What many have remembered about this post is the reference, the books should be considered to be separate continuities. This post continues on to say the book is canon just as the games are, although the community becomes mute on this point. When YouTuber Darko got the chance to interview creator Scott Cawthon, we learned many things about the process and development of the series, including that the series was intended to end at the third game. Scott said, "I think when I was making the game, in my mind that was the end of the trilogy, you know. I think in my mind the story was going to be 3 games." Scott would continue with development of the 4th game upon hearing fan feedback. The story within the game would become too broad for interpretation and meant Scott needed to make another game and ground it in storytelling again. Development of FNAF World as well as the Silver Eyes novels would happen. As Scott has mentioned, the lore of something can become so crowded that you can't tell an original story anymore, and the series was intended to end at the 3rd game. This is why I don't see the series as being divided into games and books, but instead into chapters. The original 3 games are Scott's creation, telling the story of Phone Guy and the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Restaurant. The 4th game until the Ultimate Custom Night, as well as the novel trilogy, I consider the next chapter involving the works of Scott and Kira Bread Wisely in bringing the Afton, Emily families and Fredbear's Family Diner. This would also go on to include the Fazbear Frights books. With the release of Help Wanted, Steel Wool Games has joined the contributors. This new chapter would go on to include the Tales from the Pizzaplex stories. So as the series expands beyond its original boundaries, I'm reminded that the book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, that every new piece of work needs to contribute to the grander idea without distracting from the previous work. So with that said, I've made it a point that the first 3 games were the original vision for the series, and now I'll go on to give my take on the lore for only the original trilogy of games. With this theory, I will not use the Afton family, William, Mike, or references to Henry or Charlotte, as they will not be mentioned until the Silver Eyes novels. From the 3rd game, we learn about multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures that happened at Fredbear's Family Diner, the sister location to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This situation means the suits were temporarily unfit for employees, which could mean the events were not serious enough to take the life of an employee, only to injure them. The movement of the Spring Bunny costume also led to Phone Guy's mention that this costume is not safe to wear, pointing out that the Spring Bunny costume is the troubled one. This appears to be the only motive for someone at the diner to follow through with moral acts within the restaurant chain. The minigames involving the purple guy are in 3 different tones. I suspect the shading depicts the age of the character, where darker tones are older and lighter tones are younger. This, I think, tells us the smiling purple guy pulling up the diner was the first event, where a child was singled out for death. The child, the puppet, has the tears symbolised from the child's face and would henceforth be on display on the animatronic's face. Foxy Go 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 is set at the same location where Foxy's stage is located. This would be the 5 children from the birthday party, where the 5th child occupies the Fredbear costume and from then on known as Golden Freddy. Puppet would help the children find their place in the animatronics in the Gifts Give Life minigame. Phone Guy would let us know in the first game that Foxy was his favourite. This connection between Phone Guy seems to be more than just a childhood appreciation. We get that the animatronics hadn't been washed in 20 years by 1993, which could suggest that they were on stage in the 1970s during the time of the diner. While FNAF 4 would not reflect this, the trilogy would imply the core 4 performed at the diner with the spring locks. By the events of the second game, the core animatronics are in storage, while the newer toy animatronics are equipped with facial recognition software. This addition suggests that known individuals are the biggest threat to the restaurant, and the animatronics are being used to defend against them. This already makes any previous employee suspicious and would be confirmed when Phone Guy mentions that any previous employees should not gain access to the restaurant. It should also be noted that Phone Guy is showing signs of uneasiness when describing the animatronics walking around freely, and in particular the puppet. During the call to Jeremy, he twice clears his throat, a trait some people have when they are anxious with what they are saying. Phone Guy is a manager at the time and shouldn't have such a problem around the animatronics. We also get the information that the yellow suit from the back has been used. This ties into the missing children's articles written about the restaurant. The yellow mascot costume was used to lure in the children. The minigame Save Them gives us the insight that the core animatronics would walk around the restaurant and find the victims of said mascot. This is while the toy animatronics were present. One of the more interesting lines happened on night 6. The line, "Hello, hello, oh, what on earth are you doing there?" While straightforward, it's suspicious. With the memo ensuring no staff return to the restaurant while closed, why would Phone Guy be calling the restaurant after midnight to contact the guard Jeremy? How would he know Jeremy was there? So who called in Jeremy being there? He'd been working there all week, so an appearance of a car outside wouldn't be a surprise. Did Phone Guy see the lights on? Phone Guy is an employee of the restaurant and could let himself in. This was followed up with some bad advice. It's safer to stay until morning. That wouldn't be true as the animatronics get more aggressive as the week and the night goes on. This advice places Jeremy in the path of the animatronics that have already been acting strangely around adults. In addition to this, Jeremy is assigned the guard duty during the day and told to wear his uniform and stay close to the animatronics. Again, more bad advice. Jeremy is likely the victim of the bite of 87 and would be fired for tampering with the animatronics. The tampering with the animatronics is something he has not been connected to, although he gets the blame for. By 1993, the animatronics had been going for 20 years. Fredbear's Family Diner has long since been closed, and Phone Guy is still our only connection to the events of the past. The animatronics wander the building looking for children to play with, while Phone Guy has learnt ways of distracting and avoiding these haunted animatronics. During Mike's time as night guard, he is occasionally spoken to by Golden Freddy with the declaration, "It's me." There is no connection we are aware of between Mike and the child in the yellow bear, so it is likely that Mike's uniform is attracting the attention of the animatronics. The message that Mike is possibly being told to another guard only by mistaken identity is the reason Mike gets it. The newspaper article has been hung on the back wall stating that the yellow mascot was used to capture the victims. The costume was likely Spring Bonnie costume that Phone Guy taught the entertaining staff at the restaurant how to wear correctly. Phone Guy is still at the restaurant, but it's his last week. Mike works his week and is fired for similar reasons Jeremy was 6 years earlier. During the minigame Save Them, we can presume this takes place after the restaurant was abandoned. Boarded up windows and water falling from the ceiling shows that the Fazbear Entertainment is not interested in preserving their legacy. As the animatronics are not capable of seeing the parts and service room, it's likely Purple Guy chose it to begin dismantling the animatronics. The souls would vacate their metal bodies and corner him in the back room. In desperation, he would find a costume that, in the past, could hide him from the animatronics, however, results in a multiple and simultaneous spring-lock failure. The souls would go on to gather together to enjoy the birthday child's happiest day, the birthday party they were likely experiencing before the Purple Guy's involvement. All 6 souls could now move on. So who was Purple Guy? Without the Afton family in the original trilogy, the only likely candidate is Phone Guy, the one character who connects the entire history of the restaurant chain. One motivating reason could be he's the likely employee who experienced the initial multiple and simultaneous spring-lock failure. Going back to work for Fazbear, dressed in a purple uniform, he enjoyed the act of ending the life of his first victim at Freddy Fazbear's Diner. He would return for 5 more in Foxy Cave, resulting in the closure of the diner. He showed joy in seeing his favourite character Foxy take the stage after he had collected the children together. The closure of the diner led to the restaurant's opening. We know Fazbear Entertainment was less informed about the diner as they had attempted to contact the previous owners. Without that information, how were they to know if one of their employees had worked at both locations? Phone Guy was still aware of the old locations, stating that old restaurant was kind of left to rot for a while. Phone Guy's ongoing uncomfortable nature while talking about the puppet and the freedom of the animatronics to walk around shows an ongoing conflict with his actions. Phone Guy is very much aware that his actions has consequences and wasn't the one to take the fall. Jeremy, Mike and anyone else who lasted long enough were singled out as being the ones blamed for the animatronics being out of character. The point I made about Phone Guy calling the restaurant after midnight does have another theory. If Phone Guy was the former employee no longer allowed in the restaurant, he could have been at the restaurant when Jeremy had started his shift. Thinking he would be alone, he'd be forced to use another phone extension in the restaurant. He called Jeremy and let him know to stay in the office and not leave until the morning. As Phone Guy knew the blind spots in the cameras, he could continue to hide any evidence of his actions. By the mid-1990s, after many victims had passed through this place, it was Purple Guy's time to move on. In the restaurant, Spirit takes the form of Fredbear and leads the spirits into the parts and service room. At one last attempt, the children force the one responsible into the costume, and he suffers again a spring-lock failure. 30 years after the restaurant had closed, the costume would get another chance. Having haunted the Spring Bunny costume in an abandoned building for all these years, Phone Guy would see another guard and now be the one desperate for his freedom. So this is how I saw the original trilogy of Five Nights at Freddy's. Without a single Afton, the responsible party was likely Phone Guy. Scott would take the original trilogy and expand the universe with separate continuity that includes games and books, outlining the actions of co-owners of the diner, their families, and those who hadn't made an appearance in the first games. The events of FNAF 4 and beyond would have the characters' lives woven in between the events of the original trilogy, and even if they didn't interact with the established characters, was part of a greater universe of events taking place. It would happen the new characters not initially given identities would become established names in the community. Events, as in 1985, would be added to give importance to other characters not present in the first three. So when I read from Scott's post that sometimes you can't tell an original story anymore, I understand why so many stories exist. The community wouldn't be happy with a story ending there. So when playing or reading through the series, remember Scott's words when the first novel was released. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, and if you go into it with that mindset, I think you're really going to enjoy it. Thanks for staying with me till the end. To find out when new videos become available, subscribe for future content.